As a particular early-aughts Red WrestleMan once said, licensed games are never good. And while that blanket statement may be too broad a net to cast, it certainly applies to the games we'll be covering today. Special thank you to Aeon Genesis for translating these titles, making this review possible in the first place. Why am I covering 5 games in one go? Well, join me for a closer look. Hey there everyone, this is the Hipster Snek, bringing today 5 obscure reviews for the price of 1. It might seem excessive, and trust me it is, but not for the reasons you're probably thinking. Now I have made it no secret on the Tomodachi Bros podcasts, link in the description, hint hint, that my closest friends and I are huge fans of the genre known as tokusatsu. For those who may be unfamiliar with the term, tokusatsu literally means special filming, and can broadly embrace any special effects heavy series or film. For the sake of our discussion today, I will use this term to sweepingly embrace superheroes of the same genre, and we'll be looking at the Super Nintendo, or rather Super Famicom series known as the Great Battle 1 through 5. What makes this battle so great? Well, it's because these games are a set of crossover titles starring Kamen Rider, UltraMan, and Gundam. Fanboy time! I know on paper these games should make themselves, and in a less good way they sort of did. But before we get to that, let's talk about the story, or stories as case may be. Broadly speaking, there's an environmental control system which basically goes out of control and does literally anything the story needs it to do for any particular installment. Later on, this guy named Roar, who shows up as a support NPC in the first game, becomes playable too, but he's consistently the least interesting of any of the given options. I legit don't know if he comes from anything originally or not, but that's besides the point. Then, while en route home through space, because of course we're going through space, the heroes get shot down and are forced into otherworldly shenanigans, and that's more or less all you need to know about this series. Graphically, the 5 games share a very distinctive and consistent art style. The games maintain a super deformed look, with stubby arms and legs with large, exaggerated heads on the characters to make them distinctive at a glance. Honestly, it all looks quite nice. Everything is immediately identifiable, from heroes to iconic enemies and monsters like shocker grunts and alien Balton and more. The bosses tend to have large, detailed sprites, and the levels, generally speaking, make clear what's an obstacle and what's a sheer cliff face. An important differentiation to be sure. Overall, very good presentation. And audio-wise, the games are quite generous with their retro tunes, having pleasant MIDI remixes of songs like the franchise's respective theme songs, some fun adventure themes, and some entertaining boss music. I noticed, particularly in the first game where character swapping on the fly is a norm, that some characters just shared certain tracks that only had very minor alterations, but it's overall kind of a nitpick. Anyway, the sound effects are very arcade-gamey, very bip-boopish overall, reminiscent of the early SNES, which makes it at least pleasant to listen to. Not much to say beyond that. Let's crack into the gameplay of each now. The first game is an action shooting game with an overhead camera and a strong platforming emphasis that gets stronger the longer the game goes on. You play as Kamen Rider 1, UltraMan 1966, and Gundam RX-78, on a mission to rescue Kamen Rider V3, UltraMan Taro, and Night Gundam. And you're able to swap characters at the press of a button and even play as the other heroes you rescue as you go. You move and shoot in 8 directions and can jump or expend a limited special gauge in order to temporarily summon an option, usually in the form of alien Balton of all things, in order to fire additional bullets into the air. Now, before you ask how Kamen Rider of all people is expected to shoot, here's how. He kicks and his little foot shoots off like a projectile. Alright, fair enough, it is an arcade-style game. But here's the thing that kinda sucks. Gundam and Kamen Rider, when they're aiming up, down, or diagonally, fire off-center, courtesy of having side-specific attacks. UltraMan, meanwhile, always fires in a straight line, which is what all the characters in the game should be doing but don't. As a result, I really never wanted to play as anyone but UltraMan, since he was mechanically the best and most consistent character. And the alternate heroes play identical to their counterparts anyway, so yeah, just play UltraMan. Because here's the thing, this game has a lot of platforming, like I said, and it gets more demanding as the game goes on. If you flub a jump, you just lose some health and are plopped back where you started, which seems reasonable. But lives are still limited in this game, so you want to get by quickly, and falling does more damage than any other attack in the game. That's insanely frustrating. Especially because, newsflash, UltraMan and Gundam can fly. Kamen Rider, he can jump multi-story buildings like it's nothing. Why is this petty platforming such a disgrace? I mean, yes, I managed to beat this game, but that's because I gave myself the max number of lives and I'm decently good at games like this. Honestly, it's incredibly short, able to be cleared in 2 or 3 hours. It doesn't even have co-op play, which a game like this is just crying out for. All in all, it's not very good. I appreciate the fan service, but unless you're already a fan of one or more of these series, you're not going to get anything but a mediocre game for your time. Alright, next title. The Great Battle 2, The Last Battle Twin, stars Kamen Rider Black RX, UltraMan Great, Gundam F91, and Roar, who actually dies at the end of the last game, but shh, don't tell him that, as your playable characters. Who is UltraMan Great? He comes from the Australian-produced UltraMan Towards the Future. Did you know that also had a game that was exclusively released in North America, of all places? Yeah, I had to look that up too. Anyhow, they get an order from Ultraman King to collect these capsule things, and their first stop is to see New Gundam, and let's be honest, the story is completely irrelevant. Mechanically, it's kind of like Double Dragon, I guess. I mean, it is a beat-em-up, and there is a co-op play at last. Honestly, every character in the game plays in the same sluggish, unfun, stilted way as every other, so just pick who you like, I suppose. In truth, your punches and kicks have embarrassingly short reaches, as the best attack in the game is actually the sliding kick, which can also hit normal enemies while they're prone, which would be more helpful if they didn't go sailing off the edge of the screen constantly. And bosses are a beast of another color entirely, given that while the dash kick is still effective at knocking them flat, you can't actually follow up and hit them while they're down, despite your best efforts. Also, you can do this charge punch thing that's actually a projectile, but I don't recommend it. It actually eats your health if it hits an enemy, and since everything in this game eats your health anyway, it's not really advisable. Especially when you have things like the Hambrabi who's able to firebomb you, and the fire will just juggle you if you're caught at a bad angle, which will basically auto-kill you in about 3 hits. Also, weapons in this game suck, so never pick them up. While the writing is funny, the level transition into the second stage, for example, has the 4 heroes attempting to swim through space, and yeah, that did make me crack a smile, I must say. It doesn't justify the, frankly, painful experience this game results in. Just play a good beat-em-up instead. Next. The Great Battle 3, no subtitle this time, has the same cast of heroes and picks up immediately after number 2 had ended. This time they get knocked out of space in their return ship and crash into a fantasy kingdom, whereupon the king of the local kingdom of name not given gives them weapons, and this game is just a straight ripoff of Golden Axe. I mean, it's better than Great Battle 2, but only marginally. You move around faster, and they exchange that useless kick button for a guard that rarely blocks anything at all. And the addition of weapons does give the hero some much-needed range. I'd still rather play Turtles in Time or actual Golden Axe. Next. Starring the V2 Gundam, UltraMan Powered, and Kamen Rider ZO, The Great Battle 4 desperately wants to be some kind of hybrid of Contra and Mega Man X. And wow, that is a strange combination of characters. Fun fact, UltraMan Powered is the Japanese name for the American-produced Ultraman the Ultimate Hero. Yeah, these games have an affinity for Western-made Ultras, I guess. Honestly, this is probably the best one out of the 5, and the only one I found myself seriously enjoying in any real measure. But there is one issue that I can't stress enough. In Great Battles 2 through 4, the camera does not automatically center on your hero, even if you're playing in single-player mode. You have to move to the center of the screen when the game allows you to move your hero freely before it'll follow along. That is so frustrating. Anyway, one of the cool things here is that each hero has their own weapon and playstyle, and there are situations in some levels where one is better than the others. V2, for instance, has a grenade launcher, which will travel in an arc. UltraMan Powered has a rocket launcher, which sails in a straight line, and ZO has a flamethrower that is laughably useless and pales in comparison to the other options. It's basically like Flame Mammoth's weapon from Mega Man X, but not as good or as well animated. While playing, Ditaku and I also noticed that you can jump on and ride around on your partner's shoulders if you're playing co-op mode. I assume there's some use for this, but we never found one. It's just a run-and-gun gameplay and a love letter to Mode 7 effects. As said, it's probably the best in the bunch, but I quickly found myself growing bored of it too. Take it or leave it, I guess. Alright, last game. Taking on a Wild West motif, The Great Battle 5 stars the God, or Burning Gundam, Kamen Rider Black RX, Roar, and UltraMan... I legitimately do not know which UltraMan this is supposed to be. I think it'd be most thematically appropriate for it to be Zoffy, since he's taking the role of a sheriff, but he never introduces himself, never gets a name tag, and says his special attack is the Slash Beam, a move no Ultra actually uses according to the UltraMan wiki. So I'm going to pretend it's Zoffy. None of the Tomodachi bros have been able to ID this guy, so if you can, leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Not as though it really matters. This game really wants to be Wild Guns, and I mean it really wants to be Wild Guns. Unfortunately, even in co-op play, I can't get past the first level of the game. First, you have this timed segment right out of the gate where you need to save Nobel Gundam. It doesn't tell you what to attack or what to even do, as infinite mooks will spawn and fire on you. And by the way, the enemy ammo is about the same color as the dirt, fat lot of good that does us. And even more asinine than that, at character select, if you play co-op, one of the two players is obligated to pick Roar, and the other player gets to swap freely between the other three heroes. What a total crapshoot! No pun intended. And then, if you figure out that you need to shoot the plant, and that Zoffy has the best gun in the game, you'll end up fighting Alien Dada, and that's as far as I've yet gotten. Not even 5 minutes in, and we game over, even in co-op mode. Wow. Wild Guns is hard, but at least I can clear a couple of levels. This is just masochistic. In the end, I guess I'm being overly harsh. The truth is, The Great Battle didn't even end at 5 titles. There's an SNES RPG I haven't gotten to play yet, a Great Battle 6 on the PS1, an entire series that's had entries as recently as the PS4 and the Nintendo 3DS. And I hear those ones are a lot better than these. These games are, in truth, cash grabs, trying to get kids to spend their hard-earned allowance on these titles because they love the Gundam Rider and Ultra series. And I admit that was a huge part of the reason I wanted to review them in the first place. And even Roar shows up in some Super Robot Wars games, as these were all Banpresto productions right from the start. In a way, it's actually really cool that the stars aligned, and other overused metaphors describing something unlikely happening, that Toei and Sunrise in particular are not super keen on just handing out licenses willy-nilly. So the fact that these games exist at all is something of a minor miracle. I think these games are an interesting footnote in history, and if you're really super fans of these franchises, maybe they're worth the 10 minutes each, but don't kill yourselves attempting to master them. These 5 are really just not worth it. Maybe someday we'll have a look at some of those later ones though. Oh, by the way, there's actually a really fantastic co-op enabled Super Nintendo Kamen Rider beat-em-up starring Riders 1 and 2. If you can play that one, definitely give it a go. It's actually really good. Anyway, this has been the Toku Snek, bringing today some unusual bits of obscure gaming. If you liked today's episode, be sure to tap the like button so I know. Leave a comment below as some of your favorite tokus. I'd love to know. You can also hit me and my Tomodachi bros up at our litany of social media sites, including the anime and movie podcast of the same name, and all the various delicious links left for you in the description. And for more like this each week, tap that subscribe button. It really helps out a lot. And join me here for more each week, for more obscure reviews, indie excellence, and more. And I will see you there.